we are all created to worship. The worship
Yeah.
is not about a talent. The worship is not reserved just for the talented or the skilled people, but it's really something for all of us and
Yeah.
something attainable for all of us. And I feel like, some would even think it's a naive thing to say this, but I don't think it is. I think it's just truth. When we come into worship, whether that's corporate or like by ourselves alone with Jesus, I don't think that we should leave that moment the same way we came into it.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the show. We have today somebody I'm super honored to have on the podcast, just a Christian music and worship music legend, somebody I grew up listening to, I've worshiped with, I feel like, in so many ways. We got Kim Walker-Smith on the podcast today. Kim, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. I'm stoked to have you here. I'm just getting to know you, and there's
Yep.
no reason to fake that on this pod. So I kind of
Yep.
want to ask a couple questions, like, where are you from? Where are you at right now? I know it's Montana. How did you get
Yep.
to Montana? Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. Okay. So the brief version here, I was raised in a little farming community in Oregon. When I
Okay.
was 18, I moved to California. That's where I got connected with Jesus Culture. Jesus Culture started in 1999. I came to California in 2000
Okay.
and
I was
got
2 years
connected.
old.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. So grandma is stoked to be on the podcast today. Just so happy. And yeah, right when you said I grew up listening to her, I was like, yeah, okay. I get it now. I see.
You go.
Yeah.
Was that not, I thought that was a compliment. Was that not a compliment?
No, it is. It totally is. I was laughing, telling my husband the other day, I hear that more and more. I grew up listening to you, and I'm thinking, no, you did not. And then, I find out, oh yeah, you did. You did.
Yeah,
You really did. Okay.
absolutely did.
Yeah. It's awesome. So anyways, I was there in California for 21 years. And then
Wow.
about 3.5 years ago, we moved to Montana. And the very simple answer to that was just that my husband was also raised in the same little farming community in Oregon that I was raised in.
Wow.
And we have 3 young kids, and we did not want to raise our kids in the culture of California any longer.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to raise them more in the culture similar to what we came up in.
Yeah.
So we had a farm in California. We sold our farm and we bought a ranch in Montana.
Come
and
on.
This is much more the culture that we were raised in and how we want to raise our kids. It's a slower pace of life. It's small town.
Yeah.
It's you talk to everyone everywhere you go. People are friendly, and it's kind of hard to describe, but it's just
Totally.
more like what we wanted to raise our kids in. So
yeah,
I've
grown
really
up in
good.
California my whole life, still live here, and starting to have some of those similar conversations, like what does life look like here for an extended period of time, for a family, for all of that stuff. So I get totally what you're saying. What part of California were you in? Were you up in Sacramento area?
Yes. So our farm was about an hour outside of Sacramento, like the foothills going into Tahoe.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful.
There's a little tiny community there called Rescue.
Okay.
And it's like maybe 200 people. We had a post office and a fire station. That's it.
Wow.
And that's where our little farm was. And we loved it.
That's insane. So how far is that from like Auburn? Is it far?
So I think it would be like south, maybe east of Auburn. Probably.
Okay.
I don't know. Not too far. It's kind of hard to tell because it's not any kind of direct route. You'd be taking weird side roads to get there, but yeah.
That's amazing.
An hour maybe.
Well, hey, I'm super stoked to have you on the podcast. I'm really excited about your new album coming out, Trample.
You. Yes.
Got to listen to it, which is always exciting when you get hit with a little early link.
Yeah.
Makes you feel a little special, but also you go, wow, really exciting to hear some of the new music that's coming out. I loved, like, when I first listened, I think the first song the sound was different than what I was expecting.
Mhm.
Has this like kind of like Americana almost like it almost has like a need to breathe type sound
Yeah.
type thing kind of going on. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I could be totally wrong, but
No, no, you're right.
definitely has like a different sound than maybe what I was used to hearing from you.
Mhm.
But I loved it. I thought it was super awesome. Really excited. And what I still loved is as you dove into like the story of the album, like there were still so many worshipful moments inside this
Mhm.
album where there's cool sounds, like modern sounds, but also moments to really like encounter the presence of Jesus. And I feel like, at least from outside looking in, like you've fostered that like atmosphere to
Mhm.
the presence of Jesus is
Mhm.
like one of the giftings on your life. And I've been to Jesus culture things. I've been to conferences that you've led worship at, and I've
Mhm.
encountered the presence of Jesus while you've led. And so I was excited to listen to the album and hear that was still at like the forefront of the album.
Mhm.
I thought
Thank you.
it was really incredible,
Thank
but it
you.
got me kind of thinking, really. And on this podcast, we answer a lot of questions, and one of the questions that came to mind when knowing that you were going to come on and then talk about this album and everything is, I really wanted to get
Mhm.
down to what I think a lot of people are asking, especially in this context in this world, is what is worship
Mhm.
and what does worship look like? How do we worship? And so I really kind of wanted to ask that today and talk about that a bit today, as we kind of ramp up for what God's doing in your life and this album you're about to release. And
Mhm.
I'm sure that comes with a bunch of new things and awesome opportunities and all that. But really, just kind of want to ask, what is worship to you?
Yeah. Well, you know, the very simple kind of response, I guess, to that question, if I were just to break it down, and it was like, okay, you just got this one moment to just say this one thing about it, I would just very simply say that I think that worship is Jesus pouring his love out on us and us responding to that love and pouring our love back out on him. It's just
Yeah,
an exchange that's happening. And I think that if there was no connection or relationship to Jesus, the songs or whatever is done on the stage, however, whichever way you do it, doesn't really have much meaning. It's just kind of hollow. But
yeah,
that relationship and that exchange is what gives meaning and what gives purpose to the songs, to the lifting of hands, to the dance, to whatever your expression is.
yeah,
And it's really easy to get caught up in the arguments and in the weeds over the expression, over how it should be done, over
yeah,
how it should be expressed. But if I were to just define it, I would say that what it really comes down to and how it would be defined is that relationship and that connection. The Bible says that we love because he first loved us. And so I
yeah,
think that when we experience, when we encounter, when we feel the love of God, it literally just pulls the love back out of us. The natural response to experiencing God is to worship him, to
yeah,
give our hearts, to respond in a way of surrender. And so I think that the expression of worship, which is, a little bit different, all comes or should stem from that relationship and that
yeah,
connection.
totally. Yeah, I love that. Romans 12:1 says, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. And that is your
Mhm.
true and proper worship. And
Mhm.
it's kind of like what you're saying, like, um, except in this context, when it comes from relationship and it comes
Mhm.
from a place of, I want to offer my life as a sacrifice because I understand whose life was offered as a sacrifice
Mhm.
first.
Yeah.
And when you understand that revelation of who Jesus is, what he's done in your life, how he has
Mhm.
completely shifted the paradigm of how you can encounter God,
Mhm.
and has given us access to the kingdom of heaven, to the throne room in an instant,
Mhm.
it really shifts how you worship. Like it completely
Yeah.
changes the way in which you understand what you're doing and how you're doing it and why you're doing it.
Yes. Yeah, that is exactly what I wish and hope and pray and am always kind of moving towards within the body of Christ, is that the body would recognize that very concept right there. That idea tells me that we are all created to worship. The worship
Yeah.
is not about a talent. The worship is not reserved just for the talented or the skilled people, but it's really something for all of us and
Yeah.
something attainable for all of us. And I feel like some would even think it's a naive thing to say this, but I don't think it is. I think it's just truth. When we come into worship, whether that's corporate or like by ourselves alone with Jesus, I don't think that we should leave that moment the same way we came into it.
I
I
agree.
think that truly, if we are coming into the presence of God, if we are encountering God, if we're having a moment with God, how could we stay the same? How could
Yeah.
we not be changed or affected or altered in some way by that moment with God? And so that, to me, that's the goal. That the goal is not to have a polished service
Yeah.
or that we did the songs well. The goal is that we would have that moment and that our lives would be changed or marked in some way by the
Yeah.
moment with Jesus.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, I think it's like so important from a worship leading standpoint. Probably it's like probably more important. And I wonder if we miss this sometimes. I'm not bashing on worship leaders, by the way. I love worship, but like I wonder if we miss it sometimes. Like, hey,
Yeah.
production went really smooth.
Hmm.
I lead an evangelism ministry. We have music coming out of our ministry. Like we have these conversations. Hey, the songs went great today. Production was awesome. Blah 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 blah. But at the end of the day, it's like, did we host the presence of Jesus? And
Yeah.
did people encounter Jesus? Like, uh, I I would have more of an issue if we didn't host the presence of Jesus than if Jacob sang out of key. I just for me, I'm like, I don't think
Yeah.
anyone came for a concert. I think people needed a life transformation. That's why they're here and why they're in their room. And I don't think worship was ever a place for concert. I think it was a place for encounter. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm just passionate about that. And I think, um, yeah, I just really think that the life of a believer should come out of worship.
Yeah.
It should
Yeah.
come from a response, right? To like
Yeah.
who God is. Scripture says that even the rocks cry out.
Hmm.
Like the
Hmm.
rocks?
Hmm.
And I have a
Hmm.
hard time doing it. I
Yeah.
got a lot of words in a day and the rocks are beating me to
Yeah.
praise.
Hmm.
That's, it's I think
Yeah.
it's just that's like a sobering mindset.
Yeah. I think that, yeah, I mean, I think we do miss it sometimes, because it is easy as a worship leader to walk off the stage and having had a successful production, as you say, and to feel like then you're a successful worship leader. But
Yeah,
having a successful production doesn't really mean anything. That
totally.
truly, the whole point is not to have that, but the whole point is to encounter God and be changed. And I know that there, like I said, there are so many different expressions of worship. I don't really like to get hypercritical of the expression. I have been in so many different churches and in so many different
Yeah.
expressions.
Yeah, me too.
I have been in the sacred, beautiful, it's the hymns and like a piano and that's it. And it's so
Mhm.
beautiful. And I find Jesus in that. And I have been in the big, loud, like what so many of us are used to, all the lights and all the production. A little harder for me sometimes to find Jesus in all the production because I don't really, my preference is not really that, but I
Yeah.
still can because
Yeah,
of the relationship, because of the connection, and because of my desire to worship.
totally.
And I think that uh, if I'm being, really honest and transparent in this, and going back to, kind of getting off a little bit sometimes in that and kind of missing the mark. I had this experience just a few years ago in California. Actually, I was at a worship event. We are doing a Q&A beforehand, and this young girl, she looked like she was probably 19 or 20. She raised her hand and she says to me, "I just want to know how I can get a record label to notice me. How can I become famous like you?" And it just killed me. Like
Whoa.
it broke my heart. And I thought,
Yeah.
is this what she thinks I do? Like, is
Yeah.
this like her perception? And I didn't feel angry at her, like, how dare you? You're wrong. I'm a mother. I'm mature. I've been in this a long time. I went internal and went, okay, if this is the perception, even if my best intention, like I can look at my own heart and go, nothing in me desires fame.
Yeah.
Nothing in me is trying to give off that perception. That is not
Yeah.
my intent. But somehow that's happening.
Yeah.
And if that's happening, I'm going to be humble and I'm going to turn inward and just repent and say, okay, well, God, if I'm contributing to this, like that's not my heart
Yeah.
and that's not what you want. What do we got to do? How do we got to change that?
Yeah.
And kind of the path that I've been on in the last couple years is this path of kind of going, at one point worship moved into the industry. It wasn't always that way, but it did at one point. the benefit is that worship music is so accessible. There's
Yeah.
so many worship songs. There's
Yeah.
you can have this beautiful moment with Jesus on social media, like witnessing something. Like
Yeah.
I can see even the tools of evangelism through that. Like I get
Totally.
that. That's the good part. The bad part is like in that process of it being commercialized, it kind of painted a picture of something that it was never really meant to be.
Mm.
And when that happened, it wasn't just that worship kind of moved into the industry, but the industry leaked into the church. And
Wow.
the industry kind of started painting a picture of what worship should look like in the church. But the industry should never have been dictating to the church what worship should look like within the church. You know what I
Wow.
mean?
Yeah, it's
And
so good.
so I think this is where, again, going back to what you said, like we can miss it sometimes. I think we are in some ways missing it in this piece right here,
Yeah.
where we have so many within the church who are observers and not engagers. I think they're observers though,
Oh.
because this is what we're showing them. We're
Yeah.
showing them a performance. We're
Yeah.
kind of
Wow.
painting this picture. So again, in humility, I can't be upset at this girl that this is her perception and
No.
that what she's seeing. I have to go, okay, well, we're missing the mark a little bit. I'm going to just, like I said, I'm going to be humble. I'm going to be honest and say, I think this has landed maybe where it was not meant to land. I
Mm.
think we're giving off a perception that's wrong, not the one we want to. And what do we got to do? And what do we got to change to have young girls go, how can I get closer to Jesus? I love the
Yeah.
passion that you have in worship. How do I get passion like that? How do we get them asking questions like that? Not how can I get a label to notice me and get
Yeah.
famous?
Yeah.
So
That's so good.
yeah, so I think
How
that's where we need to kind of shift some things.
Yeah, I love that. I wonder too. I had no intention of this conversation going this way, but I'm loving it. How how do you think then? Like, how do you ride that tension? Like, how do you ride that line? Because there's nothing wrong with signing a record deal. There's nothing
Right,
wrong with getting
right.
funded to produce incredible music for the kingdom. There's
Yep,
nothing wrong with playing a stadium event. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. Like
right,
those things are all things that are pointing the kingdom of heaven. There's nothing wrong from making money from what you're doing. Like
right.
you got to eat.
Yep.
How do you ride that line where you're going? There's the line between artistry and leading worship, and the line between like being famous
Hmm.
and having the humble heart to just have a desire to lead people to Jesus. How do you walk that tension? Like, well, it's a genuine question. Like,
Yeah.
I really want to know that.
Well, okay. I think one part of that is um, it's so good to stay in the mindset of I'm serving. Jesus provided us the absolute best example of leadership, which was to serve, to be a servant. And if you are a worship leader, I think that your job and your role is to serve the body of Christ.
Yeah.
And if I can keep that in my mind that I'm here to serve the body of Christ, now that kind of helps me in that tension. But also I personally I try to stay connected to people. Like you don't want to be so much on the stage where you're not connected to real people. You're
Yeah.
not down there praying with them in the weeds with people, leading them through something. Like if you don't know how to lead someone to salvation, or you don't know how to pray for somebody to get delivered or set free from something, or you don't know how to like walk through stuff with people, like that's a bummer. Like I just think if you can't, it doesn't feel right to me to be like I'm on stage as this worship leader giving this perception of some, whatever kind of connection with Jesus, but I can't get down and pray with you. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah.
So I think these are things that I can do to kind of help in that, keeping people close who are really happy to burst my bubble if it gets too big. Like
Yeah.
that's, yeah, accountability and staying
Absolutely.
humble. But the other part of it is the part that I don't have an answer for yet, because I'm asking the Lord about this. Like, God, you know, like I said, going back to that girl and her question, because there is a tension there. Like you're
Yeah.
saying, those things it's not that they're bad things or evil things, but what needs to be different, and how
Yeah.
do we do it different so that it's not those kinds of questions, you know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Mhm.
And I don't, that's where I'm like, I don't really know the answer.
Yeah.
I don't know that the answer is worship leaders never go that path. I don't know that that's the answer.
Yeah.
but I think there is a different way. I think there is a better way. And I think it just starts with us just I don't know, like I said, just being humble and just at least be willing to have a conversation with the Lord about it and ask him,
Totally.
can we be doing something different? Should we be doing something different? Is there a
Yeah.
different way?
Yeah, where's the heart posture? It's probably what, like, a lot of stuff comes down to,
Yeah.
like, where's the heart posture? I think people, you can look outside in, even the little girl's perception to say, like, "Hey, how do I get famous, or how do I get, recognized, or how do I get whatever?" Like,
Hmm.
that's not necessarily your fault that that's her perception,
Right.
especially if your heart posture is not that.
Right.
So I think just a lot of it comes down to, like, God is looking not at the outside, but on the inside,
Hmm.
saying, what is going on between the ears and what's going on in the heart? And,
Hmm.
like, what is the motive? Like,
Yeah.
are you making worship music because it was the only record deal that they would give you, or, like,
Hmm.
do you have a desire to lead people into the presence of Jesus? Like, is that the call on your life? So
Yeah.
I love that answer. So good. I want to ask you a couple more questions about
Hmm.
yourself, and then we'll talk a bit
Yeah.
about the album. But
Yep.
I really want to know, how did you get started in worship leading? How did you know that this was something that you were called to do? What does that look like? Was it one specific encounter? Was it a lifetime of walking with Jesus and slowly finding yourself in that space? Like, what was that journey like?
Yeah. It's funny, years into, I guess let's just call it my career as worship leader. I was at this event and someone asked me that question, like, when did you know? Like, was there a moment that like you knew I'm called to this or created for this or whatever? And it's funny because right when they asked me that, I kind of went, oh, I am called to this. Like, I am doing it.
Yeah, yeah,
Here I am
yeah,
doing what I was called to do. I had never actually thought about it before. I had this pretty radical salvation experience when I was 18, where this is when I fully surrendered my life to God and gave my life to him. And I just said, I will do anything that you want me to do. If the rest of my life I'm working at the gas station, like, I don't care. Like,
yeah,
put me wherever, but I just want relationship with you.
yeah,
And I didn't really think about what I'm called to or what I'm created for. I just was so fixated on the relationship. And I had walked through so much. I had been abused by stepfathers. I had come with a lot of baggage. I needed a
yeah,
lot of healing. I needed a lot of deliverance. And so that's probably partly why I was so fixated on the relationship with Jesus.
yeah, yeah,
And so it wasn't really about what am I going to do as much as who I am. I needed to know who I am, and I belong to you. Okay, I belong to you. What does that look like? What does that mean? And in that process of the relationship growing, it was like he was just guiding my steps. It says in Proverbs, man makes his plans, but the Lord aligns his steps. So I
yeah.
just felt like my eyes were fixed on Jesus, and he was just one step at a time, just leading me into things. And it was almost as if one day I opened my eyes and looked around and went, how did I get here? How did I get on this stage? How am I
Yeah,
leading worship? How did this happen? Because it wasn't really, it was not what I had planned. It wasn't what I thought would happen. I grew up singing. My whole family is musical. I thought, because everyone in my world sang, I thought everyone sung. I thought, I'm not special. Everybody sings, right?
yo,
Everyone can do this.
how does it feel to be so gifted you think everybody can do it? It's like everybody walks. What do you mean? Everyone.
Well, that's how I felt. That really
It's
is
so
like,
crazy.
and
I
maybe it
love
was
that.
just, because I was surrounded in my
Yeah.
family by that. So I just thought, like, everyone does this.
So
And when I
awesome.
was a freshman in high school, I was in choir and I got in trouble and I got kicked out and I got banned for the rest of high school.
Oh,
So I
no.
wasn't singing in choir or anything in school. I was just, living my life. And so suddenly it was God just kind of pulled me out, and he just put me where he wanted me. And
Yeah.
but it taught me something. God is the one who opens doors. And I know people who have had this experience where God spoke to them and said, this is what you're called to do. And they've just had, it in their sights, like they're moving towards something, which I think is incredible. That was not my experience. My
Yeah.
experience was just fixated on Jesus and kind of going, my hands are up and you can put me wherever you want me. And then he just put me in worship, and
Yeah.
here I am.
I love that. I was talking about this with a friend literally yesterday about like, a lot of the times if you go after like what's in God's hand, it's so often you can miss his heart. But if you
Yeah.
go after his heart, then he just ends up giving you what's in his hand. And that
Yeah, it's
sounds
so
like
good.
that's like your story. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I really just needed Jesus. And I was like
Yeah.
not in a good spot. And I needed healing and I needed to encounter him. And I just went after Jesus. And then I found myself in the will of God. I found myself through walking through open doors. I found myself in
Yep.
opportunity. I found myself not having to
Exactly.
strive or anything. I just got in the stream of the will of God and found myself at the bottom of the river
Yeah.
going, oh, okay, this
Yeah.
is great. And
Yep.
that's freedom. That's encouraging for me. Like even things going on in my life right now behind the scenes, like that's encouragement for me. Like, hey, just chase the heart of Jesus.
Mhm. Yeah.
You'll end up where you're supposed to be. The will of God is so great. He's such a good father. Like
Yeah.
I love that. That just really encouraged me. And I think it's gonna encourage even my friend I was just talking to that I'm gonna send this podcast to and
Yeah.
say, hey,
Awesome.
listen, not because of me. Kim's got some advice for you. I want to talk a little bit about the album. I want to talk about songwriting.
Mhm.
I'm a novice songwriter.
Yeah.
And so I kind of want to pick your brain about songwriting a little
Yeah.
bit, and then I want
Yep.
to hear about the album. So, like already said, this album has a little bit different of a sound, correct?
Mhm.
Is that
Yes,
fair
it
to
does.
say?
Yep, it
Okay.
is. Mhm. Yep.
A great sound. I love it. How did that come about? Because I went back, I did a little bit of Kim Walker-Smith discography
Mhm.
deep dive, right? And I went
Yep.
back to the bangers, like all the
Yeah.
greats. And then I
Uh-huh.
also listened to the new album, and I was like,
Yep.
still great, different sound. So I want to know
Yeah.
how did that come about?
So, okay, so most people probably know me from, I think you mentioned Jesus culture, and
Hmm.
that's where I've been for 21 years. I was with Jesus culture, and when I moved to Montana a few years ago, I thought that I would still continue with Jesus culture on the music side of things and with the label. But when I got here, I felt like the Lord said it was time to end that and to go into new things in a new season. And so becoming an independent artist now, like not being with any label, it was kind of going in, approaching recording was like
Yeah.
different. So obviously with Jesus culture, my main thing that I always did was live recordings. I
Hmm.
had like a Christmas album that studio I had on my side, which was a very intimate, personal record for me, which is why I did it in the studio. But other than that, it's pretty much all live, and that's what people are mostly used to with me, and that's where I'm really comfortable. I mean, I'm a worship leader, like that's
Yeah.
where I am. But all of that was really easy, just logistically speaking, to do.
Yeah.
Being a part of a church, a part of a movement,
Hmm.
we can gather together, we can record live.
Hmm.
Well, suddenly being on my own and in Montana and not like connected to
Yeah.
anything like that, it was like, well, I could put together a live recording, but it didn't actually feel right for the season I'm in. And just because
Yeah.
it felt different. And when I got all the songs and got them all written, I just had this thought in my head, I could feel it. I could feel that these songs were just different. And I wanted the production of the songs. I wanted this song to kind of dictate its production, if that makes sense. So oftentimes we write the songs and kind of maybe who we are or our sound or our normal whatever is what decides how the songs are going to be produced and how they sound. But this time it felt opposite to me, where I felt like the songs themselves were kind of dictating and showing us how they should sound, if
Whoa.
that makes
Yeah.
sense. I probably sound
Totally.
like a hippie saying that, but
No.
just it that's kind of how it was. It just
Yeah.
felt like um so Boxes, the first single that came out, is a great example. Boxes, when I was singing it, when I was writing it, the melody, the way that it's kind of hitting, I could feel it. I'm like, this is not, if I tried to make this song sound like all my other previous stuff, it would be a huge disservice to this
Yeah.
song.
Yeah.
And the message, it just wasn't right. Even the message of the song out of the box, it required something different. And so I decided it's going to be a studio album. There's 3 different producers total on this record. They're all producers I'd never worked with before.
Sweet.
So one producer did Boxes, one producer did the song Mama. All the rest of the songs were a producer named Rob Elmore, who I love. It was so great working with him. Um, and doing it studio in Nashville. I never recorded in Nashville before. Like,
So fun.
it was all just so different. And it was me again, just hands up saying, God, I trust you. You're doing something different. I can feel it. These songs are different. And it, I don't, it's just me just, yeah, again, just saying, I don't know. I think people are going to love it. I don't think it's a
Yeah.
huge departure of who I am,
No.
but it's a different sound, like you're saying. So
Yeah.
I think people, especially people who have been listening to my music for a long time, so far, the response has been, I love this. It's different, yes, but
Yeah.
I love this. And it's still Kim.
Totally. I mean, it should be different, right? Like it's a different season of your life. Like
Oh, yeah.
things, if something stays the same, it's like that's not growth. Like it,
No.
as your
Mm-mm.
life, as an artist, like as your life progresses and develops and changes and you change and grow and strength, like stuff changes and the sound
Yeah.
changes. And I get what you're saying when it comes down to like writing a song and that song like has a sound that even in your mind as you're writing the song, you're like,
Mm-hmm.
this is going to sound like this and there's nothing we can do about it. Like this is
Yeah.
just like this song is gonna be like have this sound.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the sound of your record, like it sounds like it was made in Nashville, which is
Yeah.
awesome because
Yeah.
It has that Nashville sound on it.
Yeah.
So when it came to the writing process for this album, did you have like a
Mhm.
pretty clear vision of really what you wanted to be speaking in this album? Were you kind of aimed in one direction, or
Mhm.
was it really just a reflection of like where kind of season you're in? Tell me a bit about the writing process.
It was my absolute favorite writing process ever, of
Sweet.
all the writing processes I have ever done. It was
Wow.
so good because um, there's so much freedom in being independent. And I don't want this to come across negative
Yeah.
about like church or label or any of those things. But when you're part of a church or a movement or a record label or all of those things, as I
Mhm.
was, when you are writing, you write with those things in mind. And so if there's an overarching kind of vision of the house, of the ministry, of whatever it is, like, you have aligned yourself with that. That's why
Yeah.
you're there. And
Yeah.
so much of what you're writing and you're doing is kind of filtering through that and aligning with that vision, with that house, with that message, whatever it is. And it could be perceived as a restriction. I don't think it is a restriction. I just think it's a focal point. Like, you're
Yeah.
writing with these things in mind and being intentional in the message. But being independent, I could literally say whatever I wanted. Like, I could feel that freedom of, I'm not writing for a church or a movement or a label, and I'm not writing their message. I'm writing my message.
Yeah.
So what is my message? And what is it that I want to say independent of those places and of those things? And I went through a process when I got here to Montana. I kind of was going through some stuff and working some things out. And on the other side of it, I felt victorious and I felt like I learned some things. And so I wanted the songs to be a reflection of that victory and of what I had learned. And I wanted them to be lyrics that would cause like a prophetic stir in people, to kind of push them into thinking a different way or looking at things a different way. And oftentimes, we write songs while we're in the process. It's actually what helps us as artists to
Yeah.
process whatever it is we're in,
Yeah.
which is beautiful. But it wasn't that way this time for me. It was
Wow.
written on the other side and going, hey, this is what I figured out in there, and I want to share that.
Whoa. That's
And
huge.
so that's what these songs are. And so I went in with kind of a list in my mind of, I learned this and I learned this and I learned this, and I want to talk about it and I want to say it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I felt this like oomph in it,
I
like,
came in with a
I'm
testimony.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
and if you have ever, I mean, this is my favorite. It gives me chills like thinking about it. If you've ever heard a brand new Christian given their testimony, they
Yes.
just met
So
Jesus,
fired up.
there is nothing better. My
Yeah.
favorites are the ones who like are dropping F-bombs
Yeah,
like
yeah,
in the
same,
middle of it
same.
because they
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
They're just so happy.
Yes.
They're not trying to make it polished or
Yes.
pretty. It's messy. It's real. They're telling you about the crap they just got saved from, and they are stoked. They just met the one who
Yeah.
has changed everything for them. And that, I love that. If we could just bottle that and just
Yeah.
hold on to that, like
Absolutely.
Christians, don't lose that,
Yeah.
like hold on to that.
It's so
And that's how
refreshing.
I felt. I felt coming on the other side of that, exactly what you just said, a testimony.
Yeah.
I have something to say, and I am fired up about it. I am
Yeah.
stoked about it. And I wanted these songs, like, I feel like I came out swinging,
Come
and I
on.
wanted these songs to show that and to display that. And I wanted people to feel the oomph
Yeah.
in that, the power in that.
They definitely have that feel. They definitely have
Good.
that, like,
Yay.
Kim's swinging at the devil on this album. She
Yeah.
came she came to
Yep.
trample. Little
Yes.
plug.
Yep.
No, I love
Yep.
that. I think it's so great. I think using like your testimony is so powerful. Even like the test, not just your overarching testimony, but even the testimony of like, hey, yesterday I was
Yeah.
here and now I'm
Yep.
here. And this is what the Lord taught me between point A and point B. And I
Yep.
still got to get to C, I still got to get to D, but this is what the Lord taught me
Yeah.
here. And to use that is so powerful. Like you said, that there's a lot of songs written out of like I'm in a place, I can't find my way out of it, so I'm gonna write my
Yeah.
way out of it or write my
Yeah.
way to make sense. Those are powerful too, because a lot of people
Yeah.
find themselves in that. But then there is power in a song or a story where you're going, I was there
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm here, and here's what God says about it. And that just amps people up. People are like, oh,
Yeah.
I can get through this. This is life changing. Like
Yeah.
I can attach myself to this song because this song is prophesying the truth over my life of what I can experience too.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I love the album. I felt that when I listened to the album. I felt encouraged. I felt fired up.
Good.
Felt the closeness of Jesus. Which
Good.
of the songs was your favorite to write? And then which of your songs became your favorite after it was produced?
Oh, that's so hard.
Like pick from your children, just real quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it really does feel that
Yeah.
way. Okay, so probably my favorite to write and like in the very beginning of everything was probably Boxes.
Okay.
Because I feel like that, um, gosh, I needed that song. Like I needed to say that. I needed to say it out loud. Like, I'm not going to be bound to those boxes anymore. But I'm not going to keep God in a box. I'm
Yeah.
not going to put him there. And I have seen, I have witnessed what God can do and the ways he can move so far outside of our paradigms and our own mindsets and our own boxes. And I just, that song just gets me like so fired up. And like I said, I personally, I needed to speak it out loud and make that declaration. But the song that really, gosh, it's hard to choose, but the one I probably love the most ish, because it's like I said, it's so hard. But
Ish. Yeah. Most
yeah,
ish.
on the other side of it all being done and out and everything is Mercy Seat. And Mercy Seat is so raw and honest, and it's a confessional song. It's repentant. The song starts off by saying, I've been the one, I've been the judge, I've been the one assuming that I know it's best.
Yeah.
And then it says, Father, forgive me, forgive me.
Yeah.
And the whole song is just repentance and making a confession, and it feels necessary and needed
Yeah.
anytime. In my experience, when you're ready to change, well, it kind of starts in that way. It starts with humility, and it starts with repentant isn't just always saying you were bad. Repentant is just saying, I'm just turning, I'm going a
Yeah.
different direction,
Yeah.
and that direction is towards Jesus.
Totally.
And so yeah, that one, I'm not necessarily someone who like, I don't really listen to myself
Yeah.
all the time. I'm not like just like turning on my own music and listening to
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
But that one actually makes me cry when I hear it.
Nice.
Like, and it's kind of funny to say, or to think that I would make myself cry. But this song, it was difficult even writing with that kind of honesty and like putting it
Mhm.
out there.
Yeah.
And I know, like, when the song was done, I was like, this will not be everybody's cup of tea, and
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But it moves me to tears because I feel it so strongly,
Yeah.
and my heart of just so wanting to be aligned with Jesus, and that's the bottom line. And anyways, that's
Yeah.
probably the one that on the other side came out, and I went, oh, this one, it gets
Yeah,
me.
this one hits. No, I get that.
Yeah.
It's I've gone back and listened to like messages I've preached and like had myself in tears. Not because I thought I was so good, but because like I know where I was preaching from.
Mhm.
Like I
Yeah.
know when I was saying what I was saying is because I went through what I went through.
Yeah.
And so you feel like that revelation that you're able to speak on so
Mhm.
deeply when you like hear yourself speak on it and then it almost hits you like, "Oh my god, we got through that."
Yeah.
And we came out better on the other side. And you're like,
Yeah.
wow, that's thank you, Jesus. And it's just an emotional
Yeah.
experience. And being able to, um, yeah, create something and put it into words and put an experience into words and package it up and then present it to the world is like it is a beautiful thing. And also like I think a lot of people don't understand how much of your heart is actually in that thing and how much of like yourself is in that thing and how
Yeah.
vulnerable it actually is to share. So I get when you say like, "Hey,
Oh,
a
yeah.
couple of these songs just hit me between the eyes and get me
Yeah.
teary." I
Yeah.
totally get that.
Yeah.
I don't want to take too much of your time. We're basically at the end of our time. But I just wanted to ask you a couple things, and then you can kind of plug all your things, albums. I want everyone to hear it.
Mhm.
I think it's so powerful. I think it's going to encourage so many people, be great listens. I think people are going to encounter Jesus. But two questions for you to answer before we finish. Number one, um, for worship leaders that are listening to this, give them one tip, one piece of
Mhm.
advice,
Yep.
anything that you think
Okay.
is important. And then I would say um, for songwriters,
Mhm.
and this is a selfish question. This is a question for me that I want to
Yeah.
know, and I'm
Yeah.
sure other people.
Yeah.
Give me one tip when it comes to writing
Yeah.
songs for Jesus. Um, answer those two things, and we'll call it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So for worship leaders, I would say, this has been my biggest piece of advice for over 2 decades now, which is, you have got to have a active growing relationship with Jesus. It's
That's
not
so
always
good.
the answer that everyone wants to hear, but I'm telling you, you can't lead people into freedom if you aren't free, and you can't lead
Yeah,
people into breakthrough if you have not experienced breakthrough.
yeah,
And we are the best worship leaders when we have taken the time to really grow our relationship with Jesus. And you don't just grow to a point and arrive. It has to be ongoing. It has to be where I am always and constantly and consistently pursuing God and working to grow my relationship with
yeah.
Him.
So
And
good.
truly, this is the best way that we can serve what He has called us to and serve the body. And I learned something a while ago. I had this thought in my mind about, when you get older and you've been in it a long time, um, it's easy to get a little stagnant, or even to feel like, do I still have something to offer, or can I keep up, or whatever it is. And it's funny, I looked up relevant, and because everyone's like, well, I want to stay relevant, especially as you get older, and it stresses me out hearing all the old fogies say that. And I'm like, oh gosh, gotta stay relevant. Okay.
It's a lot of
Well,
pressure.
it is a lot of pressure, for
What does that
crying out
even
loud.
mean?
Yeah, I know. But well, you look it up. Relevant means to stay closely connected to the matter at hand. Well, in worship leading, what is the matter at hand? It's Jesus.
Yeah,
So if
wow.
you will stay closely connected to Jesus, you will always be relevant. Like, you
That's a
will
word.
always have something to offer and something to give, and you will have a way to serve and to lead because you have stayed closely connected to Jesus. This is what you have to offer. Now, you can only go so far on your own talent or your own abilities. It will take you a ways. It'll take you a distance. Yeah, especially if you got some really good talent.
Yeah,
But at one point, you're going to run out, you're going to burn out, it's going to be fumes, and it won't be
yeah.
good. You'll probably crash. It will only take you so far. So just figure it out, learn it, resolve it right now. Relationship, thriving, growing relationship with Jesus is the key. To
That's so
songwriters,
good.
I would say, um, my best piece of advice is don't write alone. And so many of us as creatives, like we kind of want to write alone, even maybe selfishly. Sometimes it's like, it's so awkward to take your idea that you don't know if is good and like it's vulnerable to like show it to somebody else.
Mhm.
If you look at all, like you as an individual can make a list of your favorite worship songs. It doesn't have to be like the top CCLI or whatever. It just be
Yeah.
your personal favorite worship songs. I promise you, every single one of them were written by like three or more people. It's like a group effort.
Yeah.
Rarely is a worship song or any good song written by just one person by themselves.
So good.
And I really think that part of that reason is because iron sharpens iron. It's so helpful to have someone else in the room with you, be really vulnerable and just decide we're not going to be jerks to each other. Like, we're not going to
Yeah.
be like, that's dumb. Like,
Yeah.
don't be a jerk. Like, you will know the bad ideas, but you got to kind of speak the bad ideas out to kind of get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to like dig in a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of things that will come out that's like, nah, nah, nah. And then you say something, you're like, oh my gosh, that's it. That's it. That's what I've been looking for. And it's so helpful, especially with a worship song when it comes to theology. You write something and someone says in the room goes, it sounds like you're saying this, and this, and that's a little weird. And then you go,
Yeah.
oh, that's what
Yeah.
you're hearing? No, that's not what I meant. Okay,
Totally.
let's change this.
Yes,
Because,
yes.
we can be a little blind sometimes, like to our own whatever, or how we come across or whatever it is. And it's just helpful to have someone to bounce the ideas off of and give feedback on their perception of what you're saying and how it's coming across and all of those things. So really, there's a lot of things that I could say about songwriting, but I really think that's like probably one of the biggest right there
So
is
good.
get with a couple other people that you trust and write with people. Like, don't try to do it by yourself. It will make you a better songwriter if you can get over your own fears and insecurities and write with others.
That is so good. Such good tips. Well, thank you so much
Yeah.
for your advice. Thank you so much for sharing about your life,
Yeah.
sharing about Revelation of Worship, and just about the album. Can you tell the listeners when it comes out how they can get it?
Yes. Okay. So Trample, the whole album, it is out tomorrow, June 7th. Don't know when this is going to air. So, I mean, I guess it could be out before that. But you can get it on all of the platforms. It's anywhere that you listen to, download, stream music. It's on all of those places.
Come on, go listen to it. I swear it's so good. It'll be linked below, and you're gonna be super blessed by it. Kim, thank you so much for coming on. Really meant
Thanks
the
for
world.
having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Anytime. You're welcome. Anytime.
Thank
You
you.
got another
Thank you.
project coming out? Come on the pod. Or if you just want to hang,
Awesome.
questions with Caden's always here for you. Lori knows. I'm
Awesome.
always like, hey, Lori, who you got? But so good to have you here. Thank you so much for coming. And listeners, we will catch y'all next time.